In chapter 12 of Proteinaholic, what did you mean by obesity? It's not about the carbs.
Yeah, obesity and carbohydrates is a really interesting one because everybody thinks carbs create obesity. Again, this stems from Atkins and all these low-carb diets and from the very bad low-fat versus low-carb diet studies, which were, really bogus studies to begin with, but they did give carbohydrate a bad name. Again, we are made to eat carbs. Everything about our body is made to eat carbs, whether it's the amylase in our saliva, the intestines, the way insulin brings the carbohydrate into the cells. We are perfectly designed to eat carbohydrate. If carbs made you fat, then the blue zones would be pretty fat because they eat mainly carbohydrates. If you go to Okinawa, if you go to Sardinia, they're eating huge amounts of carbs. They're not fat at all. In fact, if you look at overfeeding studies where they put people in wards and overfed them carbohydrates, it's very hard for the body to turn a carbohydrate to fat. It's called de novo lipogenesis. Very difficult to do. The body will store it as glycogen until you've absolutely saturated your glycogen stores, and even then it's hard. It's an energy dependent process, so it takes energy. You actually increase your metabolism to turn a carb into fat. So it really doesn't happen that often. Carbs are not the cause of fat, and part of the problem is a misinterpretation of what a carb is. So people are like, oh, I ate pizza, so carbs cause fat. And pizza's not a carb. I mean, it's got carbs, but it also has fat in it. So it's this misunderstanding of what a carb is. It's a misunderstanding of biochemistry and physiology that has led to this idea that carbs cause fat. Quite the opposite. Carbs are an excellent way to lose weight. If you go back all the way to the rice diet by Walter Kempner at Duke, to the blue zones, to diets that a lot of us whole food plant-based doctors are giving to their patients, which are very high in carbohydrate, healthy whole food plant-based carbohydrate, show excellent results. And there's been some great studies, a huge meta-analysis show that there's no correlation with carbohydrate intake and obesity.
In chapter 13 of Proteinaholic, what did you mean by cancer, fishing out the protein connection?
And cancer is much more complex. I mean, what goes in, first of all, there's multiple different cancers in our body. What stimulates cancer growth or doesn't let cancer be checked and stopped is extremely complex. There are environmental conditions, there's chemicals, there's genetics. So it's a very complex thing. If you look at big, large databases like the EPIC database or the Adventist Health database, you will see a difference between plant-based eaters and meat eaters. There is definitely an association between red meat and certainly an association between processed meat and cancer. These are correlations, they're not causation, but we do have good mechanistic studies as to why this might be happening. And there's several reasons. It might be that animal protein has a thumbprint a little bit different than plant protein, meaning it's got a different amino acid spectrum than a plant-based protein might have. And so animal protein has more leucine. Leucine stimulates IGF-1. We know that IGF-1 is associated with prostate cancer and different hormonal cancers. So IGF-1 may be part of it. Meat itself, when it's cooked, causes the formation of heterocyclic amines and activated glycolated end products. And these, the AGEs and the heterocyclic amines, have been associated with carcinogenesis. It may be new 5GC, which is a antigen on cells that are animals, that come from animals, that do get expressed in our cells when we eat them, that may have a cancer-causing effect. So there's multiple different things in animals, in animal meat, that when we eat it may lead to carcinogenesis. And we certainly have epidemiologic data to show that that is a possibility.
In chapter 14 of Proteinaholic, what did you mean by preventing premature death?
I mean, in the part of eating a plant-based diet is to live a healthy, happy life, and part of it's to live a long, healthy, happy life. There are some studies that do suggest that less meat leads to a longer, healthier life. If you look at the Adventist Health studies, those are interesting because you got a group of people that live in the same environment, so they got whatever toxins are in the environment, they're all exposed to it. They all get exercise about the same amount. They don't smoke, they don't drink, they believe the body's the temple of the soul. So you got this group, and they have different genes. So it's not the same genes. Great population to study, been studied for many years. If you separate them, some of them eat meat, though not that much. Some of them will eat milk and dairy and cheese and eggs. Some of them will just eat fish and vegetables. Some of them don't eat any animal products. And if you look at them from a longevity standpoint, the vegans and the pesco-vegetarians by far do better than the meat eaters and the lacto-ovarian. And that should really give us something to look at. It's very hard. I mean, people are like, well, that's just correlation. Yeah, but it's correlation done on a very good group with a very big number with multiple controls. It's impossible to do, obviously, a prospective study where you're going to follow people for a lifetime and look at their longevity based on different diets. You can't randomize people to a diet for a lifetime and see how it works. But I think we've got a lot of evidence based, first of all, the number one killer is heart disease, and we know that plant-based diet helps with heart disease. The other diseases, diabetes, obesity, all those things. A lot of these studies that look at longevity control for obesity. But that's one great thing about a vegan diet is vegans tend to be a lot thinner and not have as much obesity. So I think the results we see should be even bigger results if you brought in the weight aspect of it. So we've got very good evidence that a plant-based diet could help you live a longer life.